All right, welcome everyone. We're going to call to order our board workshop. It is 5 o'clock. Declaration of a quorum, we have 7 members present. Hearing of citizens, we do not have anyone signed up to speak at this meeting. So we're going to move into D1, which is consideration and discussion related to the 26-27 school calendar development process. So Mr. Mann.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for allowing me to come and talk with you tonight. If I'm wearing my Christmas camo, then it is time to talk about calendars, right? So we're going to jump into the work. I've shared this graphic before, and this is just a great demonstration of the timeline of where we are in the work. We start this in the early fall because we like to get the feedback from folks, and so we find ourselves here in December, having just had our DEIC meeting last week where we made final revisions to the calendars that you have in the blue folders that are in front of you that we'll talk more in detail with everybody here in just a moment. And tonight, this is to give you an update on the process, let you know the work that we've done, and then we are prepared to send out the survey to the community to get stakeholder feedback from all across the community over the winter break, and then bring it back to DEIC in January for us to look at it as a group. If we need to make any changes, make changes, and then hopefully then make a recommendation for you as a board to review and hopefully adopt in January. So that's kind of where we are with the process. And like I said, it began early in the fall. I started this last year where after August PD, I said, you know, let's get folks' take on how things are right after they experience something, whether it's professional development or a break, instead of asking them to recall how they felt about something weeks or months earlier. And so we've done that, and then every time that we do that, we take the feedback to the DEIC to review, and we've done that every month. And so these are the type of questions that are included on the survey. Feedback on work days, on the number of placement of professional development days, specifically in August, but also throughout the year because we have them at different times during the year. We get opinions on the school start day of the week, month-specific questions, so very specific about, we had this day off this August and September. What are your thoughts around that? You know, would you like it again? Would you like it moved? Same for October, same for November. And then we had fall break specific questions as well in the different surveys. And the role of DEIC in the calendar development process also includes for them to learn the parameters that we operate within and the constraints. And a big one is the construction piece. And we, give them an update where we are on all of our construction projects that were approved by the voters in the different bonds. And so that we see where we are, and then the projections of what needs to be completed the coming summer, so that then helps us to know start dates. And there was the request for us to try to push back about a week from what we did this year to give them just a few more days to do the work they need to do. And so I think we were able to put together some options that will meet that request. We always work really hard to align with A&M's calendar because we know the impact that has on families if we're not in alignment with them as much as possible. We talk about the minutes requirements, teacher contracts, meaning the number of days that we have in our teacher contract requirements. We have discussions around, we've got to consider the child care restraints that this can put on our families if we have a lot of extended breaks. And then also the ending the school year of Memorial Day has been something that we have done for a long, long time in CSISD. And so we try to continue to do that so that it gets our seniors that opportunity to jump right into college in the summertime if that's what they choose to do. And then so you can see, like, this is the process, right? We review the survey data. I'm going to show you some of that here in a few minutes. But this year I asked them to make some month-by-month decisions. One of the things that was mentioned last year in DEIC was, is it possible for us to take this month from this version and put it on this month in this version? And so this year, whenever we went into that, I said, well, let me figure out how to make that happen. And we were able to do that just through the way we manage things in the meetings. And so gave them more of that, I like this, I don't like that, can we put these things together kind of options. In October and November, I brought 2 versions, but 2 drafts of each versions and asked them to take these 4 and make them into 2 and tell me what you like this August, this September, whatever it is, but it gave them the opportunity to really tell us what they want to see. But then as individual members, they get to give individual feedback as well. So it's not just a group feedback, it's also what they put into the survey mechanism. And then we ask them to share out whether it's with their staff or community or whatever we need them to do depending upon the month. So survey data. We received a lot of data. So you can see here the different opportunities that folks were given to give us their thoughts, perspectives on different pieces. And so the August Workday survey count, that is one that Austin sent out from the district level after we had that Workday and got staff to give us some perspective on that. And then the August September survey was one that I sent out and was able to get, you can see there, parents, staff, students, and even a couple of community members. And Austin helped us out by pushing it out across emails and social media to try to get as much voice in there. And then we did the same thing in October. The November survey was strictly for staff because we had narrowed it down in DEIC to different choices. And so then we wanted to get the staff perspective on it before we then put it out community-wide, which is the next step for this process. And so these are just some screenshots of the different survey tools that we used to show you where the metrics and the counts came from. And so all in all, you can see we had lots of participation. I was really happy to see a lot of parent opinion put out there for us. And one of the DEIC members even made the comment toward the end of the last meeting, said, you know, this year the conversations that we had didn't seem like it was as an emotional conversation because we had so many different things to look at to help us decide as a committee what folks are thinking and wanting. So I feel good about being able to get that level of perspective from people. And the hot topic this year was to have a full week in fall break or to not have a full week in fall break, okay? And so these are comments that are strictly from the staff survey. And all of these comments here, I'm not going to read them all to you, but I grabbed all of these because they all mentioned, like, we want a fall break. It's very clear that staff appreciate and like a fall break. They feel it's necessary. They feel that it's a good rejuvenation for them, for the kids, families, right? And so it was very clear, and you can see the star ratings whenever we use Thought Exchange, and people have the opportunity to rate on a scale of 1 to 5 if they like that, they don't like that. And what you're seeing on the side of the ratings are the other votes that weren't a 5 if they were a 4, 3, 2, or a 1. So this is how the tool helps us to see the level of agreement that people have with certain comments. So it's a very useful thing for us to see. And then this was from the staff survey as well. And these were staff comments that they want a full week to have off in October and not just a couple of days. And so as I'm reading through these and looking at them, I started to look and I noticed that there were some trends, and I highlighted just some of them here. There were some others, but they were very specific to say that there's many districts in Texas that take a full week off in October, and we need to do that as well. And me being the data guy that I am, I'm like, well, I want to find out. I want to look, right? And so I went on what I like to call the Tour de Texas ISD calendars, right? And so what I did was I started out just like every person in 2025 does first. Like I asked ChatGPT. I put in the question, how many ISDs in the state of Texas have a full 5 days off for staff in the month of October? And so I just put the screenshot of the response. And obviously it's a rough estimate that's extrapolated that even says I'm uncertain that this is even be something to go by. But I thought, hey, it gives me a baseline. It's saying 20 to 30%. So let me just do some digging there, right? And so then I went through, and this first set that I looked at was the greater Houston area, because that's the area that we're often most compared with, because that's where we're close to in many regards. And so I literally went and I pulled up TEA's website, tea.gov, and I went and I found how many kids were there, and then I went to their district calendar, and then I linked every calendar there. So if you want to go and check my work, please do, right? And you can see here, this is the number of districts that have a full week of fall break. It's 30% of the 36, and then 69% do not. And this is with the fall, and this is specifically for staff, because in the comments, it was about staff wanting a full week off. It wasn't for the kids, it was for staff, right? And I get it. So I wanted to look, is this the case? So then I was like, well, that's interesting, 30%. So then I said, well, let's go to DFW. That's a big metropolitan region. So then I came down here, did the same thing, 39 districts. Well, then it's 12%. Well, then I'm like, oh, well, that's different. So then my brain just starts going and I can't turn it off. And my wife says, I'll see you later, right? Like, you're going to go do what you do. And so then I said, well, what about the districts we played in varsity football? Okay. So then these are all the districts that we play, that we compete against. And so 20% of those districts have that. And then, I just start falling down the rabbit hole. Here comes Austin, and they're at 9%. San Antonio, no percent. El Paso, 36%. A lot of the El Paso districts are on an intercession schedule, which means they go year round. Okay. Panhandle districts, 7%. South Texas area, South Texas districts, 12%. And then West Texas, 0%. And then I looked at all the Region 6 districts because that's who we live near and that's who we often get compared to. And so the 30%, right? So I looked at all that and then I was like, well, let me just, kind of put this into a format whenever I share it out with folks. And so 181 total. And these are the regions that we looked at and the numbers that were there. And I looked at the letter grades just because I can't help myself to see where they are, right? And then you can see the graph. And I really tried to get this in order of day 1 to day 5, but Google wasn't cooperating and I gave up. But you can see here, 75 of those districts have 1 day off. And it is worth noting that many of these districts, they have other breaks, but it's because of county fair. And it may not be in October or November, it may be in January or February. And so they take a couple of days off in different places, okay? But you can look and see, you have the spreadsheet, you have all the data. You can see the breakdown of letter grade versus number of days off. And so I looked at those pieces. I came over here, and this was the part that really stood out to me because I was curious, how many kids are we impacting in looking at this? It's 181 of the districts, of all the districts. So it's 14.75% of all the ISDs, but it accounts for 61% of the kids. And I was like, holy cow. That's not even a half, right? But we've got over half of the kids accounted for. I just thought it was interesting. And of course, then it makes me think, well, this is why it's so complicated in Texas, because there's so many different varied needs of the ISDs. It has nothing to do with calendar. It was just an interesting thing to look at. But then we looked at districts within 10% of our eco-dis to just look and see. And so you can see the majority of them have 1 day, 14, 2 days, no days, 5 days, 3 days. So you can see, so looking at all the statistics in there, and I told DEIC, it's all super interesting and really cool to look at. But at the end of the day, it tells me that districts do what they need for them, right? But whenever I hear people say everybody's doing it, like I want to look and see if everybody's doing it, right? Are we missing the boat on something? That's just how I roll. So parent feedback, in the October survey, we had really good parent response. I broke it apart into elementary and into secondary. And so putting it together as it relates to the October and fall break. So 11% of those of parents said a fall break, they would prefer that. But then there were mentions from other that weren't specific to wanting that, and some of them mentioning work conflicts, childcare, that a short break was sufficient, or they would want more frequent breaks. But they appreciate having a break because they like to be able to do things with their family, right? So, and then this is the last piece of it, and then we'll look at the draft calendars. But this came from our survey that we did with the staff. And so you can see I underlined the big takeaway. Coming from staff, and it says, while some value breaks during Thanksgiving, Christmas, and spring, others prefer minimizing fall breaks to maximize summer vacation. Overall, the emphasis was preserving a full summer break. And then the other AI summary from the staff feedback is there's strong preference for a fall break, some advocating for a full week. Concerns include the impact of the break on learning continuity for the students. And so overall, the fall break is seen as valuable. And so I take all that together and I say that people do appreciate having a break, but I don't know that everybody wants a full week. And DEIC folks seem to be in an agreement with that. So, but we put 2 versions out there because there was a lot of feedback last year whenever we did the community survey. They said, we're really not making a choice. We want to have a choice. And so we want to make sure that they've got a choice. And so that's what's in front of you in your blue folder. I'm not going to go through all the nitty gritty details of each one, but I did provide for you a cheat sheet. And this is also linked onto the survey that our community will take. They're going to receive a PDF that has each of these two calendars, the fall break and the no fall break version. And then it has this that has what's the same. And the majority of the things on here that you see are the same are the national holidays that we see in some of the PD days. And I have a notation on there because Dr. Harkrider informed me that he was hearing that A&M may move their week of spring break back to the week of the 15th. If they do that, we'll make our change too. We'll come back here, we'll say, hey, we need to do an amendment to our calendar, and we just move on, right? Traditionally, they do the second week of March, but they don't release theirs until late January. And so that's an easy change if that's what we need to do. But then it has on here what's unique between the two different calendars for people to see. And so they can see the days are listed on there, PD days, workday schedules, teacher workday in October versus fall break in October. November, there's a workday on the no fall break that's not in the fall break version. January on the no fall break comes back with a workday and a PD day versus January on the fall break is a PD day when we return. And then there's a teacher workday on the fall break version that wouldn't be on the no fall break. And then there's a teacher workday in April. So it's really looking at what are the differences in choice, and they look at that. And on the survey, they'll have the opportunity to provide us their perspective and any comments and feedback that they have. So the next steps in the process is for us to gather feedback from all of our stakeholders on these two drafts. The plan is for us to get it posted by tomorrow. We have the link and everything ready to go, so we'd like to get it out there sooner, but we'd like to get it out by tomorrow to give plenty of time. It'll close on January 2nd at like 11:59 p.m. that night, and then we'll start to break it apart. That'll give me the time to get prepared for DEIC the next week, and then hopefully from DEIC we're ready to come to you guys in our January regular meeting with a recommendation from the committee for y'all to consider. So that's where we are. I'll take any questions that you have.
Do the two calendars end up having the same amount of school days, same amount of PD days, same amount of teacher work days?
Not 100% in line with everything. So the no fall break calendar has 169 school days, and the fall break calendar has 170. Both of the calendars give us a cushion
That was my next thing.
of 3 days, but also both of the calendars have 2 bad weather makeup days at the end of May that if we need to dip into those where we would bring students in, then we could do that if necessary. And so that in essence gives us 5 days if we needed 5 days. And then as far as the PD days and the work days, let's see, I've got it, give me just 1 second. Teacher work days on the no fall break is 10, and teacher work days on the fall break calendar is 8. So there's a couple of day difference there. And then as far as the PD days on the no fall break calendar, there are 8, and on the fall break calendar, there are 9. And so there's, again, one-off differences on a couple of them, and it just happens to be with start date and the fall break dates configuring into the counts.
Jeff, you said 5 days were built in, 2 bad weather and 3 days with minutes.
Yeah, 3 days and change, like 3.77 or 0.37. Yeah.
So I know this maybe is tricky because it's a little bit here and a little bit there, but is there something that we are giving up by having the fall break version?
We're coming into staff returns in on the 6th and 7th of August. Like that's the major
really the staff
difference
days. Okay, yeah.
that folks are going to notice is they're going to come in 2 days prior. And that Mr. Simak and his crew, they would be able to work through that with having staff on those 2 days if that's an issue with whatever construction may be occurring. Like I know he would like to have nobody there, and I get it, but this is how we're trying to meet where everybody's at.
Quick question on the window for feedback, and I think this is something probably always struggle with because of the timing and trying to get it to DEIC in January and to the board. And so posting for feedback, on the two calendars to the community on the 17th, I believe you said, of December through January the 2nd. Any concerns with, that's kind of when everybody disconnect, or we still tend to get pretty good feedback? I suspect a similar window's been used in the past. I just don't remember.
Yeah, it's very similar to the past. And typically what we see, because we direct email it and social media it, we tend to get the probably 80+% responses within the first 2 or 3 days, most of the time. So yeah, but it is similar with what we've done previous
Okay,
years.
thank you.
Yep.
I guess the only thing I'd kind of say on, we're calling them no fall break and fall break. I mean, it's about those October days, but really both of them have student days off, right? One of them has 2 student days off. One of them has 3 student days off, right?
Sure.
So, I mean, when a parent or family's looking at it, there's a somewhat of a fall break. But the real difference is the no fall break, or I guess the fall break, the teachers get those days off, right? It's really, like you had mentioned before, when we talk that language, it's really more in the eyes of the teachers and staff,
Correct,
right?
of not having to come, period.
Right.
You know, and it's funny because it's always a struggle every year, right? We do the blue calendar, the green calendar, the A calendar, the B calendar, and like, what do you call them so that you're not coercing a choice over the other, right? So, but yes, the kids will get some sort of a break away from school. Families will get some sort of a break. It's just a matter of how long is that for them. But truly, for staff to not have any work expectation period on those 2 days in October.
Well, and one thing that you said, but that is important for the community to remember, is that with pushing the start of school back a week for construction purposes, it's hard to keep getting those days off that we might want. And so I feel like you guys have done a great job. I didn't know what it was going to look like when when I heard we might be doing that. So it's great to still have those days, included in our calendar. So thank you for doing that.
You bet.
No, I agree. In general, we were, I think, very fortunate this year with the way some of the dates
Yes.
worked out, that we were able to get most of the things we're kind of used to, right? The same amount, general, the week off, fall week at Thanksgiving, finishing in time for, before Memorial Day.
It helped
Yeah.
Memorial Day's May 31st.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That's
That
what I
was a
meant.
big,
Yeah, it really
tremendous
helped.
help.
Yeah.
Yep.
Anything else? All right, thank you, Mr. Mann.
You're welcome.
Appreciate that.
Yep.
All right, that's going to move us to item D2, which is our budget workshop. Ms. Wilson.
Let me get out of your way.
Good evening, Mr. Harkrider, Ms. Ege, Board of Trustees. I appreciate your time tonight as we go through a second board workshop. And we'll just kind of go through really the current budget. Every time I come back with these budget workshops, I want you to see where we're at in the process for this current year. Because as you know, we were 300 students less than what we were anticipating. And I want to show you as you go what that will look like. Sorry about that. I want to talk about balancing the numbers, just where we are in the process, what we've done so far as we built the current budget that we're in, and then just make sure that you guys are comfortable with allocations that we've set and some other things that are going on, and then revisit those board goals that we talked about last board meeting and make sure that they are what you want and we can move forward with that, and then just talk about next steps. So first of all, I just want to show the current revenue as estimated. It's a little over 40% of our fiscal year is complete, and we have collected 35% of our revenue to date. 12% of that, of course, is our property taxes. We're still a little early in the game in receiving property taxes. And then our state revenue, we are 95% collected. You do see a negative number there, and I'm sure if you're looking at it, you're trying to wonder how we collect negative revenue. And that is because we had to make an adjustment where when we changed our fiscal year to July 1 through June 30th, they had booked the revenue from the previous fiscal year, and I had to correct that. So we had to reverse that out. I reversed it out of last month's spreadsheet so that you wouldn't think that we had collected over our state revenue. This is just the adjustment for that period. But no, we didn't collect negative revenue. And then of course you've got your on behalf TRS payments and your federal revenue. A couple of things I want to touch on when you look at our revenue is really that state funding, because as you know, students drive how we receive our revenue and attendance drives how you receive revenue. And if you've been through this process with me before, I know Ms. Iggy has mentioned it before, Heather, you're not estimating a full 97% of your kids or 96% of your kids are coming, you've got a lower ADA percentage, which is always given me a little bit of buffer in case we are faced with this. Now, we expected 60 less students. I did estimate less than what the demographer said, and then we came in even further. Okay, so if you look at our current summary of finance at the end of the second 6 weeks, we are $1 million short in state revenue. I know it adds up to $1.8 million, but the 800 was my buffer. We're below it. Okay, we're not going to see that. It's not going to come back. There are a few things in those numbers that are new, and our software systems haven't had a chance to catch up. So there's new allotments in the last legislative session that we're having to gather in different pieces of different softwares and estimate a little bit. And so, but we'll continue to monitor that. Another thing I want to bring to your attention is, I know you guys have heard, we have this new PEMS reporting where we're doing real time to the state. That's going to affect us because after the first semester, about January, they're going to take our real data and then they're going to adjust our summary of finance. So if we turned in numbers like we were going to get this many students and we get less, they're going to adjust us real time during the school year and not wait till the end. We usually have a settle up in the summer. They're going to settle up on us all through the year. And so we're going to have to be very mindful of the numbers that we estimate. And as we see things like this, they're going to be holding back state revenue. And so we'll have to kind of mend and go as we go. Another thing that you can look here is interest earnings. We're a little short on our interest earnings, and then we've had another drop in interest rate, and so we're going to have to continue to monitor that. A lot of that interest earnings is something that we're bringing to, that we brought to the DEIC, that we'll bring back to the board to amend. Our depository contract changed tremendously, where we used to get 10 basis points. We're getting negative 20 basis points, and that's hurting us interest rate. That's hurting our interest earnings, and we didn't even know that that was going to be a thing until we had already adopted the budget, and so we're seeing some of those effects. The other on your federal revenue is just the SHARS funding. If you looked at the historical information on that, we used to collect over $3 million nearly in SHARS funding, and we're down to nothing right now. And so those are hitting us hard, and so we'll continue to monitor that, but I just want to keep you informed as we go through the fiscal year so you're not shocked at the end. Okay, and we can make adjustments as we go, but there's not a lot of things in our budget that can be adjusted. Sometimes the school district might make special projects in the summer and then pull those back, where our current budget doesn't have special projects, so we can't really pull anything back. This is our total current expenditures, and so you can kind of look through there on functions. Like I said last time, I like to look at it two different ways. I like to look at it as a function because you guys adopt a budget based on fund and function, which is the top part of that. But then it's easier to monitor a budget when you're looking at object code, because 84% of our budget is in payroll cost. And like I said before, if we have blown a budget, you're going to find out real quick in our payroll costs. So you want to make sure if you say this percentage of the year is expensed, you should expect about that much in expense in payroll. One thing that I want you to keep in mind is something that we don't post until the end of the fiscal year is a teacher incentive allotment. So they work on that all year long. They actually get paid out in the summer because it's earned during our school year. They're going to take that cost and they're going to put it back into this budget, okay? And that last year was over it was about $3.8 million. And so when you're looking at those percentages, you're gonna wanna know that number. So $3.8 million, we look for that to be a little bit higher. It seems to grow. Bridget and her team do an amazing job. That number grows every year for those that qualify for TIA. We're going to look at balancing the numbers real quick. We're going to talk about some enrollment trends. We're going to look at previously budgeted cost management that we used for this previous budget or the current budget that we're in, and then look at allocations and staffing models and what we developed through our cabinet got together. We reviewed everything, and then we made sure I spent a lot of time just figuring out who we had, how many people we had in each position, and then kind of rolled that back into a staffing model. And then board priorities, we're going to retouch on that. So when you look at enrollment trends, you can look at the 2025 snapshot data. We brought this to you last month. Again, look at those lower grades. I know some of that's birth rate, and then we have smaller class sizes in our lower grades. And so we need to anticipate what the future looks like. And then just enrollment trends again. I want to just show you this one more time, because where you think we should be growing, like a Pebble Creek and things like that, we actually lost enrollment on those campuses. And then we grew at some campuses that don't have growth, don't have developments in those feeder patterns. When you look at historical growth, this is our historical growth. I went back to 15, 16, and I was really kind of spending a lot of time looking at fast growth allotment. So I verified that these numbers were indeed what was utilized in snapshot, but then also utilized for fast growth estimations. And so we started back in 15, 16 with a little over 13,000 students, and in 25, 26, we are just shy around 14,000 students that we currently have for snapshot. It was 14,016, but there's some students in there that aren't assigned to grade levels in a sense, and so that's why the numbers, if you're wondering why I'm 20 off, that's what it is. And then in 2018, in August of 2018, ILT Texas, which is this charter school, opened in our community. There are over 900 students in that charter school right now, and that's where you can see some effects on our numbers when you look at some of the development growths in our area. When you talk about 25, 26 BOSC budget, yes,
Can I
ma'am.
stop on just real quickly on that ILT thing? Are those 900 that they have total, or are those 900 that live in CSISD district? Do you
Those are 900 total.
total? Okay, so
Budget cost management efforts, these are some of the things that we did last year leading into this one, and I went through these last time, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on them, but I'm just going to talk to you about how we come up with our campus budgets. And so we do campus allocations to all of our budgets based on estimated enrollment numbers when you're talking about base allocations, and then I give them so much to go towards a copy cost. So they get a fixed cost for a copier plus a base allocation per student. Those are based on estimated enrollment. Some school districts say they give you 90% now, and then once snapshot information is in, they'll go ahead and give you, they'll settle up with your numbers. I felt like we had taken we moved a lot of cost around, we moved a lot of budgets around, so I went ahead and gave them 100% of their allocation. And then if I shorted them, and I have about 3 campuses that I know I owe a little bit of money to because they came in a little higher than the estimates. When that happens, when snapshot number comes out, we'll go ahead and give them additional funding for those kids. Special programs, we allotted per special programs. Those are based on our snapshot information. And this is how I really want to look at the numbers going forward as we build this new next year budget. So this is my spreadsheet that I utilized to gather all the information. I just kind of wanted to show you where we were getting all the information to get their total budgeted amount. And then this does not include Title I, but you can kind of see the Title I campuses in the far corner. It'll tell you which ones are Title I and which ones aren't. And then you can kind of also see where your dual language campuses get additional funding. And then, like I said, there's a fixed cost column there. We did that just because like all the elementaries have exact amount of copiers. I didn't want them to have less per student in a sense. And so we kind of give them a little bit of a fixed cost in there. Our staffing models are established like this. And so what this allowed us to do is look across campuses and make sure we're equitable to all campuses. A lot of the adjustments we made this year was just on that instructional aid. We had to take some instructional aids away from campuses that had a lot more per student, and then we actually gave an instructional aid to a campus that had fewer. The one that sticks out the most here was our receptionist. We have a campus that had over 600 students that didn't have a receptionist, and we have some that have 450 students and they had a receptionist. And so there was just some inequitables there that we just have our eye on and know, like, when things come up that we could go ahead and add that back. But this allowed us to kind of look at it, but it also kind of allows us to look at the cost of overhead of a campus. And so you might have a campus that has 450 students, and you might have one that's 600, but they're going to have that top box. They're all pretty well going to have that same box. So if you look at it kind of about on an overhead, the cost per student at one of those campuses to have 450 students is a lot higher than the cost per student that has 600. So if you kind of want to look at it that way.
I'm
Yes,
sorry,
sir.
go ahead. Quick question on the previous slide. Real quick, just so I understand your calculations going across and your allotment
Yes,
for the
sir.
programming. What's the discretionary sub-allotment?
So what we did this year is just, if you want to do subs on your campus and it's not for someone that's 6 or it's not for someone that's PD at our district, we allotted you so many subs per teachers on your campus.
Okay.
And so that's kind of what that is.
For
and that's,
if they want to allow
like,
department chairs together or something?
yes, sir.
Okay,
Like outside
got
of
it.
our planning time that we already
Okay.
allot them. Or if they wanted someone to come on a testing day or something like that,
Okay.
they had those extra money for subs.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. I kind of put all the models in here so that you have, I gave these to you as we were building the budget, but just really kind of wanted you to understand what we kind of based everything on and how we worked to get to the numbers we did. But it also allows us, as we go through these continued budget cuts, it allows you to look at what we have to know, where we might have more than our peer districts and things like that. Then we've got our high school. Another thing to mention is, I'm going to go back to the elementary. I don't mean to switch on you. 22 to 1. I know that's a lot. So we've set all of our grade levels at 22 to 1, and you can kind of see the ECSE numbers in the pre-K and how that's allotted. And then when you look at your intermediate and middle school, we try to keep a 25 constant. And I know Dr. Harkrider and Panay talked about that in the last budget meeting, just to kind of talk through kind of what we try to maintain on our campus. At our high school, it's a class constant, so it kind of fluctuates a little bit, but that's kind of our goal, is to try to keep them at a class constant, an average of 25 per classroom. This is a spreadsheet on steroids. I don't mean for you to look at it, but just to kind of look through the process we go through. And I really just wanted to touch base on the fact that a lot of times we say that we're cutting staff, but we're really not. We're just trying to make sure when grade levels move from one grade level to another, or if we've got a campus that's losing students, that we're still maintaining that 22 to 1. And so this is kind of what we looked at last year. Last year we had a demographer that came up with numbers, and then I kind of ran numbers, and then we looked at each different one just to kind of see what that means. Like, if we go off of here, we need 4 teachers. If we go off of here, we need 3. And then we kind of came to where we moved teachers around based on, not like I said, we weren't increasing the class sizes. We were just trying to maintain that 22 to 1.
The staffing model numbers, those are based on probably some standard with TASB staffing recommendations, or?
There are a little bit of everything on the staffing models. Yeah, you start with TASB. What I did is reached out to all the peer districts and started gathering peer districts. So really, we didn't compare ourselves this last year with peer districts because of the fact we might have 2 instructional coaches, they might not. But I really wanted to take time to establish what we had and make sure we were equivalent across all campuses. The next step would be to try to look at some additional models and then just compare peer districts to what we have in our district. Okay. And we can do that for departments as well. And we can utilize that TASB salary model.
Yeah, peer district like Bryan, I assume, Tomball. Mm-hmm. Okay.
So you would look at it in multiple ways. For one thing, like if you look at Bryan, they might not be a peer district when you look at how our makeup of our kid is, but then we need to compare to them because of the fact that they're so close and we have to compete with them. But then, Tomball, absolutely. Instructional wise, yes, we've got to compare to them. So on staffing, sometimes I try to look at, when you're trying to compare a staffing, we've got to look at our area peers, and then maybe in your classroom, when you're looking at how to staff a classroom, you might look at your instructional peers.
Mm-hmm. Got it.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. This is just basically our attendance, and I kind of wanted just to point that out. We did grow a little bit, not where we need to, but our attendance, instead of it's still out there where we got to go to 95 to 96, was just a big jump. When we started the attendance model, we really kind of want to look at that 3-year average, just to not say, okay, we want you to go for 94.9 and you're going to have to go to 95.9 the very first year, because we recognized they took that huge gap from 93.7 to 94.8. So we wanted to give them credit for that. So we did a 3-year average, but this year is a new baseline. And so we did go up the 1%, which is the 96%. And I've got the attendance incentive information in a couple of other slides that I can touch on. But basically, it's 2 different semesters. The first semester, if they get a 0.5 to 0.9, they can get additional money per student on their campus if they get their attendance up. So basically what we're doing is taking that additional revenue that we receive from getting their attendance up and then pushing that back to the campus to benefit that. And so those are different adjustments I make throughout the year in addition to the allocations that they get.
And you might talk about this more, you mentioned with attendance, but when you are budgeting for the next year, what attendance number are you
I try to
using
stay pretty conservative, so I'll look at a lot of different things, but I'll budget on no more than what we have this year, no. So if we have a historical attendance of 96%, that's what I'm going to go with. I'm not going to budget that we're going to get to 97 because there's a good possibility we might not reach that high.
What did you say, you created 25, 26 budget on 95? Is that what you did?
Yes, it was about 95%. So on your zero-based budget is what we did for our departments. So all of our departments within the central office had to come up with a zero-based budget. We looked at it as a central level, achievement level, and enhancement level. And so in all honesty, they gave us a lot of the 3 different levels, and we budgeted a lot between essential and achievement and looked in there. So we really can touch on that 3rd level in the department budgets. And when I say department budgets, that's just our departments within the central office. And so we required them to do a zero-based budget. We'll require them to do the same. It won't be as hard this year because we spent a lot of time. I know Dr. Harkrider and Sarah were tired of me saying, hey, I got some more budgets in. Let's spend, 5 hours looking at them. But yeah, we went line by line by line, looked at everything, looked at what they asked for, and just kind of felt like where we could go and where we could move. That was also where we took a lot of what was budgeted here at central office, and I want you to know we pushed that back to the campuses. And so if they budgeted ESL money here, I just took it out of here and gave it back to the campus. If they budgeted pre-K, we took a lot of that out of here and gave it back to the campus to give those principals a little bit more discretion on how they spend the money. We did special ed as well. Like if they're buying equipment, we hold it here. But if they're buying supplies for their campus for SPED, like wipes, food, we push that back to the campus and they'll let them be responsible for that and then give them discretion how they utilize those funds. And so we spent a lot of time rotating budgets around and just trying to get that back out. This is just the attendance incentive. I'm sorry, when I added that one slide, I messed up the rotation a little bit, but I wanted to give you the numbers so you could kind of see what it looked like. I have more documentation if you want more information on how we do this here. It's actually based on a CSISD model that came up with it. I stole it. Board priorities. And so after we met last month, we kind of came up with a few. There wasn't a lot of conversation, so I kind of ad-libbed a little bit. So I'm going to show you what I got, and then if there's adjustments to it, you let me know. I think there was a lot of discussion last month on protecting fund balance, not so much moving it to a 6-month, but protecting what we have, making sure that we're staying in that 3-month, 4-month area right now as we go through these times with not getting a lot of extra funding from the state. Prioritize academic quality, and so making sure that we keep those class sizes right now as we begin the budget process at 22-1 for our elementary campuses. And if we see a continue increase in a deficit, we might want to come back and visit as we go through this budget process if we want to look at adding 1 student, 23-1, things like that. But right now, 22-1, the 25 constant on our other grade levels, I felt like is where you guys kind of talked. Continue to look and make difficult decisions, but make informed decisions as we look through our data. We talked about accepting out-of-district transfers. I know we're going to talk a little bit more about that tonight, but that's just another way to generate additional revenue. And I think we have to be very innovative right now because we don't want to cut programs. And I'm not saying we're going to cut programs, but you can see where the staffing models are. Those things are going to have to be looked at if we can't get some of this, generate additional revenue. Improve attendance. We're going to continue with those attendance incentives, and our principals do an amazing job. We've provided them software. They can track kids and then make sure they get those kids in the seats. It's not just about money. It's about education, and we know that they perform better when they're in the seat in the classroom. And so we'll continue to work on that. Expand learning options, consider online alternative. That won't be for this next school year, but just to prepare, that's another thing that they're allowing us to get additional funding starting this school year. So when we look at next year, we just want to be prepared to kind of be innovative. to kind of get some more revenue is what we're kind of looking at. And then evaluate all programs, review programs to ensure, and suggest reductions when appropriate. But I feel like we did reduce a lot of our, we did reduce some of CTE last year, athletics and fine arts. And I'm not suggesting we reduce any there, but maybe just hold that constant for the going on. Are there any other thoughts, questions, changes? I'm gonna flip it to this slide just because it just kind of gives you ideas to think on. Are those okay for our budget priorities, or do you see anything that needs to be tweaked or moved?
I have a question, and I don't know if you know the answer to this. It's okay if you don't. Would you look at the student-to-teacher ratio, particularly intermediate and secondary? About 50% of our high school kids are on some sort of accommodation, right, give or take? Do you know, ballpark?
Blair, do you know?
Blair, do you? No, general ed, yeah, yeah. Okay, but 40? Okay, I'm just curious, yeah. My concern question, I guess, is about if you've got a teacher who has 70%, say, and another teacher has 20%. I don't know if we're looking to balance that or not, because and I get there's so much work that the counselors do of accommodating schedules, and if you need to take math in the morning, we put them in math in the morning. So there's a lot of things we're doing for the kids. The concern is just at that ratio, are we looking that granular to balance out, hey, if one teacher's got 60, 70% of people on accommodations versus another teacher might have 10 or 20, that's a lot of difference in work. And I don't know if we get down to that level or not.
Be something that a campus potentially would look at if it was overloaded. Also, depending on the rotation of paras or co-teachers coming into that setting and what the needs of those kids are. So yeah, there may be, and that would be when Justin, whoever the campus principal is, but yeah, if there was a concern and it was heavily loaded, it does become difficult based on a kid's schedule, electives and what they're taking of how that works out. But there is some balancing that they have the ability to do as well.
And so even department heads would maybe have the ability to
Good,
balance
correct.
that. Yeah, okay, good. And I get it. There's, especially with high school, that's the competition and concern and all the things that make sense that they do to take care of the kids. I'm just concerned that the teachers who are getting overwhelmed, yeah.
Right. So kind of next steps in the process. I'm going to finalize the budget goals for tonight and then review campus and non-program payroll allocations. And we've kind of looked at that tonight, and I'll move forward with those allocations. We're going to continue to examine new revenue sources. That's going to be, we're going to, out of district transfer, sorry, I'm stumbling for words. And then establish staffing based on enrollment. So in the month of February, I'll be bringing that back to you guys. We're going to work really hard on enrollment and estimating staff and get that out to our principals so they can begin the process of budgeting in January. We're going to continue to annualize cost. Right now, we have analyzed all stipends. We work to build a rubric and make sure all of our stipends are being paid at the correct amount. We push those out to our department heads so that they can kind of build job descriptions based on their rubrics and then make sure that they're being paid at a correct amount. We'll continue to evaluate overtime. They have done an amazing job here of looking at where we are paying overtime and try to get those overtime costs down. We'll continue to look at those staffing ratios. We'll continue to monitor federal budgets, and then we had our first advisory budget committee meeting last week, and they spent a lot of time in School Finance 101. I know they had a lot of fun, and they walked away with thinking accounting can be fun. But anyway, I really appreciate their time. We're going to dig into a lot of details in the next meeting, and there's one more in February, and then they're going to establish their budget advisory committee goals as well, and then they're going to be able to present that to our board of trustees. And so that's coming up in the near future. And then Austin's doing amazing stuff with Thought Exchange, and we'll be getting surveys out as we go through the process. So that's all I have tonight. Does anybody have any questions? Go ahead.
Just a few follow-up questions.
Yes, sir.
If I was looking at it correctly, how are we tracking as far as projected deficit for 25, 26? Is that 2.1? Is that what?
2.17, yes, sir.
Okay.
And then I would say we're short another $1 million on top of that, so you've got 3.1. And then we're going to be short in federal funds by close to $1 million. So yeah, it's not.
So 4.4. What, and I know you showed it at the last meeting, so I apologize. I don't remember off the top of my head. What is the current fund balance?
The current fund balance is, total is 65 million, but of course, not all of
Unassigned,
that
right.
that's because we changed our fiscal year.
Okay,
And so if you look at a 3 months operating, we're right there at 3 months.
okay.
Yeah. We're just a little bit over 3 months operating. We added 2.1 million to our budget last year if you did a 12-month to 12-month.
Right, but with the transition to the budget, you were able to add quite a bit more, I noticed. And this is probably early. I suspect this is what you'll work on with the group in the spring. As you're starting to think about 26, 27, have y'all had, and maybe Dr. Harkrider can answer this well, are y'all, what are you looking at as far as enrollment number? Are you anticipating dropping enrollment number as you start working budget next year, or holding it about the same, or?
Okay,
or
so we're going to work on.
And this may be early, this is probably a spring.
Yeah, and I was
Okay.
hoping to have it to you tonight, but we're doing boundary adjustments and everything into the numbers, and I was comparing two systems, and I didn't feel comfortable bringing those numbers.
Sure.
But if you look at we're going to go down, because if you look at our seniors, and I can flip that kind of back and
Right,
show
they're
you what I'm looking
more
at.
graduating than coming in at a lower grade. So
Absolutely.
you'll have to reduce the enrollment,
And then
and you'll just
then
take the ADA that processes through the course of this year or the last 2 or 3 years.
Right.
Okay.
It's staying pretty consistent there. Another thing that we kind of have to look at is I've got a spreadsheet that basically says grade level to grade level, and I showed a snippet of that last month and just walked one grade level 1 year up. But I've got a 5-year history of that, and just to see if there's trends there. So if there's trends that we're losing first graders every single year, then I can kind of evaluate those numbers as well. And so I'll be bringing that to the next board meeting.
Okay. Thank you very
You're
much.
welcome.
Well, and all of that is just to say that I think you did a good job capturing our goals as a board in your presentation. But I know that we're asking a lot, and it's a hard job. And I just wanted to say thank you for what you do, and just for keeping us informed. And I know we all hope that we're going to be able to find ways to get that deficit down. So.
Absolutely.
And also, I said this last time, I'm glad we've started a budget committee, and not only for, some of us on the board to dig in a little deeper, but really, I think also to involve the community to understand more of the complexities and not just the complexities, but really the limitations that we have so much because of what we get or what we don't get, I guess, from Austin, from the state. So,
No,
thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, that's going to bring us to item D3, which is a review of our board operating procedures. This is really for the 7 of us to just take a little bit of time and review those. You should have a copy at your seat if you want to look at that. And I would ask that if you haven't, that you would take some time to read through all of those and make sure that we're just all on the same page about how we're going to operate together as a board. But also there may be some things that we need to kind of tweak or update to these. So I'm not going to be asking for any action from you tonight, but this is a discussion to see if there's anything we might want to change, and then we can come back and take action on that in January. So I invited all of you to send me items that you might want to discuss. So I'd like to go through those items first, and then we can open it up for anything else we want to talk about. So some of this is really quick little things to update our current procedures to current policy and law. So for example, on page 7, item 2G, one of the changes I think we need to do is get that wording tweaked so that it represents the current process of speakers. We've gone from the cards to signing up online, and that's just an item that the wording hasn't changed. So if you want to take a look at that. And then also on 2M, same thing. That's just the remarks that we say at the beginning of that time, and those are the old ones. So we'd like to get those updated to the new ones to reflect those changes. One thing that I noticed when I was going through is that there is an item on number 2 on page 7 that talks about, let's see where it is. It's H, the person addressing the board shall stand at the microphone and state his or her name and indicate whether or not they reside in the district. I know a long time ago when I started coming to board meetings and watching, we used to ask people to actually state their address. And I'm not sure that, honestly, I don't want to ask people to do that for privacy reasons. But I think we've kind of fallen off of that policy that we have in place here of doing that. So I was wondering if we might add to the end of the remarks that whoever is saying those, some line that says something like, please begin your time speaking by stating your name and stating whether you live in CSISD. So those are just simple updating to what we currently do. Are there any comments or concerns about that?
All sounds good to me.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. I know on page 10, our list of committees needs to be updated. Again, that's really just making sure we have all of our new committees reflected on our operating procedures. So we'll take a look at that. The last part that I have on page 8, where it's talking about agenda development, one of the things that we've had to do is we've had to change when we post our agendas. So we used to be able to have our executive board meeting on the Wednesday before a Tuesday meeting, right? And that's when agendas like get talked about and set. And so on 1C, on page 8, it talks about if you have an item to submit to the agenda, we need you to do that at least 8 days prior to the meeting. But we have now had to bump that back because we're posting agendas on the Wednesday before the Tuesday meeting. And so we have executive meeting on the Monday before a Tuesday meeting. So my request would be, would it be all right for us to change that wording to say that if you want to add an agenda item, do that 12 days prior to the meeting? 12 days because we have the weekend that are not work days. So we would need you to submit that the Thursday before we meet on a Monday. I don't know that that's ever been an issue at all, but I think that's just an update to reflect our current timeline.
Makes sense. 12 calendar days.
12 calendar days is what that is, right? Okay, so that was the other thing that was brought up to my attention, and I think I agree with this. If you look on page 8, 3C, that's also about agenda development. It says, this is actually on page 9. But before or during a meeting, any board member can request that a consent agenda item be brought to the board for discussion, questions, and consideration. I want to ask us if we would like to consider saying that we should, if we're going to ask to pull an item off consent, give a 24-hour notice. I think that I've seen situations in the past where a board member wanted to discuss something that was on consent, and the fact that they were able to bring that to someone ahead of time meant that we could all come prepared with the information. If we were going to ask, for example, Dr. Harkright or any of his staff to bring us information on those items, we were able to do that. So I've seen situations where that happened and they were able to come prepared. I know part of our procedure says that we're going to come to meetings prepared. I would expect Dr. Harkright and his staff to come to meetings prepared, and I feel like we give them a better opportunity to be able to answer our questions if we don't, in the middle of a meeting, say, hey, we now want to talk about this item. Thoughts on that?
I agree. When you read through I've read through this 4 times, and it's out on the website if anybody wants some really riveting reading at night. It talks about, especially in the ethics piece of this, that we were supposed to come to meetings prepared, and to me that just kind of falls in line with it. We shouldn't ask something of them. We should give them time to prepare to present the information to us in the community. So I fully support allowing people to pull stuff off consent, but giving 24 hours notice, I think, is helpful.
Go ahead.
I think I'm fine with that if we just use consent with discretion. It clearly states on page 8 under C, consent agenda should be items that are routine and that trustees have knowledge of. So I think if we're utilizing consent under that umbrella, I don't have a problem with that. When there's significant items like policy change and those types of things that have had limited open conversation, then in my opinion, that would merit that item. Well, it shouldn't be under consent to begin with, but pulling it. So I can support obviously what the collective group decides. I think that we need to use caution in restricting our decision and discretion as a board of trustees, though. And I understand not catching administration off guard or anything along those lines. So just all the things to think of.
Well, and I certainly wouldn't imply that we should be taking away any board member's right to take something off consent. If we are now posting agendas on the Wednesday before a meeting, that's 6 days before, we're only asking 24 hours, just to give a heads up if there is something. But I understand your concern about what is on consent, and I hear that concern, and we'll keep that in mind.
I do think it really does help that we are getting the agendas sooner, right? More time to look at it. I mean, the idea is that there could, I think one other side of it though, is there could be something new or information that really does come to light about an item at the last minute. I mean, obviously that was a situation before without, to pull something off consent. But hopefully, again, up to Mike's point, is that if they are more routine type items on consent, that it wouldn't be something that we would really need to pull off the, my only other thought would be, and I'm in no way an expert on Robert's rules. I mean, if you actually go look up all of them, they're, pages and pages and pages. Is there anything about consent on Robert's rules that, about, that would be my own question. Maybe we should, find that out. Because I actually think one thing with consent, I don't even think, if it's something's on consent, the whole idea is we're not supposed to discuss it. I know sometimes, just I think out of habit, they would say, we've got a motion and a second for consent. Is there any discussion? I don't think we're supposed to discuss consent. Those would be some questions, some Robert's Rules questions just to confirm. Because if we can discuss consent, then you don't have to pull it off consent, right? That's, I guess, kind of my question.
That's true. I can look into that and get
Yeah.
you guys some information on that.
I guess something else with that, Ms. Iggy, is, and we get the agendas earlier, which Wednesday this go around, and I'm appreciative of that. That gives us an idea of what's going to be covered in workshop in the meeting. But the supporting documents still don't really get to us to the end of the day Friday. So therefore, unless we spend our weekend reviewing the documents, which I guess some do, and that's everyone's discretion, then you would need to make sure and comb through those materials Monday to bring those questions. We're shortening the timeline on ourselves as well. Again, I can get with this idea if we just use consent. We're just utilizing consent in an appropriate manner and not with big decisions.
Well, and I think that when we get those agendas on Wednesday, we may not all be getting all the supporting documents that we get on Friday, but you can still see if there's an item on there that you're like, this is not an item that should be consent, or you have concern about, you could still reach out at that point, even if you hadn't had all of the information on Friday. And, I think there has to be reasonableness, because with every procedure, there could be the one-off time that something really crazy comes up, and then you reach out to myself, Dr. Harkright, or whoever's sitting in this seat at the time on the day of, and say, hey, this is new information, this has come up. I think those conversations could still be had. But if we could, as a board, agree that in most normal circumstances, we're just going to give each other a 24-hour, at least heads up. I think that's really was the intent of it.
And the exec is deciding what's on the agenda, so it's not like conversations aren't happening as to what's going to be on consent or
True.
not, which is the role of exec.
True, but we're just keeping it open for every board member, even those not on exec, to be able to say, hey, we have the right to discuss something that's on consent, so.
Yeah, I had certainly no problem at all with the intent to, obviously, no, I don't think anybody, the plan is to try to pull something off consent at the last minute, just to give a heads up, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I think we have a bit of consensus on that, but you certainly can feel free to reach out to me. We're not taking any action on any of these items right now. I had one other thing that I just wanted as a just a reminder from a review standpoint. On page 7, this is as we talk about communicating with our community. One of the things that's been a longstanding board policy is that we, as a board member, do not respond to anonymous messages. So I would just like to ask everyone to consider that. I know there's a lot that's going on right now, and sometimes consider that might include social media. So this just a reminder. I know we as people, when we're individuals out in the community, we get to act as our own, self. But when you're in the context of a board member, just a gentle reminder that we have had a longstanding policy of not responding to anonymous messages, because we can't really engage with those people in a way to find out what's really going on there. That's all I had. I don't know if there's anything else that you guys are wanting to discuss on these.
I have a couple of things.
Okay.
On that, I'm a little unclear. I did have a question mark next to that one. Are we, just because I'm new, so I apologize if this is obvious to everyone else, but are we recommending that board members not respond to anonymous comments, or are we saying we do not? That feels like two different.
So the way that it reads is that anonymous calls, letters, or electronic communication will not receive board attention, discussion, or response, and will not result in directives to the administration. So, for example, if we were to receive as a board an email that somehow came from an anonymous
Right.
person, we could not then respond to that, or go to Dr. Harkrider and ask him to respond to that.
Sure. But like the
so-
example of social media.
Right, I feel like that one, honestly, I feel like that's a little bit of a gray area, and so that's why I said it in the way that I did, because often we're on social media, not necessarily as a board. But I know that if I'm on social media and somebody says that Kim Ege responded in this way to something that has to do with school district business, those people then know that I sit on the school board, and so I feel like, for me, as Kim Ege school board trustee, I should be careful how I respond, even in a social media setting. But I don't think that's an explicit directive. I feel like it's something that I would ask everyone to be careful of and just use judgment on.
But we could make it a directive if
We
we
could make it
chose.
a directive if we decided. I mean, yes, we could change it to specifically say that.
Okay, great. So just a couple of things. On page 2 and 3 with the core beliefs, commitments, goals, and specific results, I really enjoyed reading through those. When and how were those developed? Like who came up with those?
Wait, we're talking about.
Page 2 and 3, just the big, kind
Well,
of the
this-
overarching things that are guiding principles.
Right, these are directly from our school district. I mean, this is our vision, this is our strategic plan. These things all come, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Harkrider, but these all came specifically from the direction of our school district,
It was all in
so.
place prior to us coming.
Yeah.
Strategic plan was done 22.
Just part of the strategic plan.
Right, so I mean, like if
Yeah.
you read those goals up there, they're going to align with the goals that are on page 3.
It was done
Exactly.
in the
Go ahead,
spring-
Mike knows it well.
It was done in the spring of '21.
So it may be,
Strategic plan.
I mean, we may consider revisiting, we'll be 5 years this spring, just to make sure that it still aligns with all of the same.
Our plan is to look into that in the 26, 27 school.
Okay, great. I had one other. Let's see. Oh, this is, I couldn't really find the exact place for this, but, and maybe it doesn't need to be stated here. If it was anywhere, it would be kind of under this page 5 at the bottom. How do we, what is there, do we have any sort of rules or how we want to manage when we do get emails that come in that are addressed to the whole board and the administration? Obviously want to be cautious of seeming like any board member is ignoring someone's email, but also I don't want to complicate somebody emailing in by overstepping. So do we have guidance on how to handle that?
Yes, I would like to, look, there's two sides to it. I would like to ask the board to give, if that email is addressed just to the board, to give me an opportunity to then find an answer for that and let you guys know that that has been responded to. If it's addressed also to Dr. Harkrider or someone else in the district that is taking that on, to give them an opportunity to find an answer and respond and let the board know. That does not mean, on the flip side, I don't feel that I could ever tell you not to respond to someone. I know there's been a situation where maybe I knew the person who had reached out, and so I did also send a note and say, hey, just let you know, I do acknowledge this. I know somebody else is answering it, but generally speaking, I think it would be in the best interest of not complicating everything and confusing to allow the district personnel that needs to answer that question to have the time to do that, and then either them or myself would let you guys know, hey, we have addressed that. Does that make sense?
I would also, if you get one just to you and you can't see anyone else on it, a good practice is then to send it to the board president, Dr. Harkrider, just to say, didn't see your name on it, and let them disseminate whether or not. Sometimes they'll send them to us individually, so everyone is seeing it, but that's just a good practice to do to keep them in the loop.
Great. So just so I'm clear,
Just to streamline.
if Dr. Harkrider is on the email, we'll let him respond first. Am I
I'll
hearing that?
respond if it's sent to me.
Right.
If it's sent to the board.
Correct.
And copies me, then generally the
I will
board
have
president will
Got it.
And I'll respond, reply to all.
Okay.
I see my response.
Yes, and you'll do the same. You'll always reply all if you do respond.
Yes, sometimes it may be a situation where I don't reply all to that person, but then I come to you guys as a board and say, hey, this is, we had one of those recently, and I just emailed you guys directly and said, hey, this is what I've done. I've reached out to this
Okay.
person. So either way, you should get some sort of communication.
Okay.
And I would say if you the first one to see it, and maybe it's been a couple days for whatever reason, it's on a Friday and you see it on Sunday, there's nothing wrong, I don't think, with just saying thank you for the email.
Sure.
Just acknowledging it.
Okay.
I don't think there's anything wrong.
And there's also nothing wrong with reaching out to either one of us and saying, hey, have you seen this? It can happen sometimes that something goes to spam. And I've had that happen. I know Ms. Simmons recently said, hey, did you see this? And nope, hadn't. It had gone to that folder. So
Okay.
don't hesitate to reach out to us either and say, have you seen that?
Okay. Thank
I
you.
would say, I think it's great to know that we can make sure it gets to you too, and that, that you will be able to make that kind of more official response, after you've got the admin information you may need. I don't think it necessarily precludes us from ever, like you said before, from responding if we, especially if we know somebody or, or we feel like we want to, but you'll kind of have that official answer.
Does that help? Okay.
And we'll get a follow-up, just so we're copied, so we know it's been addressed and so on and so forth.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
And if there's ever a time that you feel like you haven't seen resolution, reach out to us, let us know, and we'll make sure that we do that.
I guess two small ones. One is back to the goals and the strategic plan part that's in there. I think we also made some changes to that, like, specific results level of the goals at some point, and some of those got updated along the way, so they may not match what we're using today, but maybe we'd wait till we redo the whole plan. I think some of those may be a little out of the second, maybe not, it's not a huge deal.
I can check and see.
Yeah.
It's the current version. not a problem.
I think the other part is just a little bit more on that communication discussion, how, how we communicate with other folks, but how we also communicate with each other. And maybe just a little discussion on, I love the emails response to emails that we receive. Obviously, we get information in a number of formats from you, from the admin, and from you, Dr. Harkrider. Transmittal is one way that gets us the weekly information and hopefully not only what's going on in the district, but help many cases prepare us for upcoming board meetings with information. So that's a very helpful and a lot of good information in there. As far as questions though, and the one thing that's on here, I think the whole, we do it sometimes, but maybe not all the time. One of the key things with like when we ask you a question, I think the underlying idea is that we all 7 should get the same information. Right? Even if one of us has this question, the idea is that we all should get that same information. And I think that's listed, I don't know even what the number is, right? But under the communications, superintendent will communicate information in a timely fashion to all board members. Somewhere there's yes, request to the superintendent and board president from any board member will be distributed to all board members. And I'm not saying it's not happening, but because often it is, and I think our Google Sheet is one way that that's happening. So do we want to document the Google Sheet in here as a way to do that, or do we want to just leave it open as we will get if somebody has a question, we'll respond to everybody? I think that's kind of what it indicates. I just want to make sure that we are all getting, even if it's a phone call question, is the expectation that we should all get the same information about a topic?
I mean, the only reason I hate to list out kind of specific things here is because I think that then kind of pigeonholes us into one thing. And we do have different ways, like you said, that we communicate. We have the spreadsheet that we can get information for simple questions. So I feel like from a wording perspective, this makes sense. The requests from any board member will be distributed to everyone. But I think to acknowledge that we do need to be doing that, whatever format the question is coming in, I think.
And I agree. I'm not sure that we necessarily need to change the wording, just maybe the discussion of how we're liking the Google Sheet. Do we like that, or is it better to get emails or put it, if there was a question that came up, then maybe the answer shows up in the Friday transmittals. Just maybe what is that preferred way for us to get that information? Maybe.
I mean, I've liked the Google Sheet from the perspective of it is a more not a question I maybe need the answer to right this day, a more general question. I've liked that because it's just easy for me to go and put it in and be able to have you guys see it and then answer it, and all the answers are there, and so kind of I can see the historical questions, and I might be like, oh wait, what did they say about that, and I can go back and see it. So to me, that's a good tool. I don't know how everybody else feels about that, but
I'm liking it. You have to check it, so that it's just kind of changing your routine, and I've been trying to do that with the transmittal. So I think it is one of the most effective ways because it is a good history of what has been asked. But I just think, like you said, just communicate. And I know, Dr. Harkrider, you've done that several times. You've been asked a question from a board member, and then you've copied us all on your response to it. So
I think, Kimberly, I'm a little confused. If you call me and ask me a question, are you saying you want me then to answer your question and then email everybody that you asked me a question? Is I'm just gonna.
I think it's worth discussing. I agree, because I can see that sometimes that would not be practical, right? It would not really be practical.
No, it wouldn't. It would not be practical in my.
But it does
opinion.
kind of say
However,
this here.
if you have a question and you think it's relevant to the entire board, I think it should be in an email that everybody gets it, and that's easy. But if I'm driving down the road, going to a conference in San Antonio, and you call and ask me a question and I answer it, and then the expectation is me get there, send an email to the board that, hey, Kimberly and I talked. I think that's little, because I don't think a question you have everybody else may have. But if it's something that's concerning for you, if you put it in an email, 100%, or Google Doc, however you want to handle that. Yeah, be more than happy to do that.
I agree with Tim on
No.
this.
I agree too.
Yeah, if it's a phone call, just a quick or, hey, XYZ, if it's relevant to the collective group, it should be captured in an email so we can respond to everybody at one time and we have it written. And I'm kind of with him on that.
And if
And
you
I
have a
don't-
pressing question too, the Google Doc, you send it directly to me. If there's something going on text, whatever, get that to me. The Google Doc is more of, hey, I thought about this, community member asked me something, can you guys look into that? That's what that really is for. Anything else that's pressing concern, direct communication is the best way.
And I think you've answered what I kind of expected. And I think it's more maybe on our side that if we do have a question that we feel like is something that's going to be information that all of us could benefit from, that the best way to communicate that would, I mean, if it is something that's going to come up soon, put it in an email and you can respond to all of us.
Or
If it's
even-
or put it in the Google Doc if it could
Right.
take a little
Or
bit
even if
longer.
we have a conversation and you ask a question going, you know what, I don't know, I've never thought about that. The whole board may.
Yeah.
No, I got you. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I think if you have a phone conversation and learn something that feels surprisingly valuable to the rest of the board, you get off the phone and then send the email and say, I thought our phone conversation would be something the rest of the board should hear your answer to. Here's what I asked. At your leisure, please answer this.
And
But
keep-
sometimes you do get surprised. It's like, oh, that's very new information. I wasn't expecting that.
And keeping in mind, we're talking about informational requests because, Open Meetings Act, we are going to be certain that we're taking care of that. So informational requests is what we're talking about, right?
exactly.
So I think what I've heard is we like the Google spreadsheet to still exist because that's good for a certain type of question. If you have a more pressing question that needs to be done more timely, please email it to Dr. Harkrider if you want a response that's going to come back out to the board. And of course, you may call him if you have, also a question. So
So next steps, we'll clean up the board operating procedures and just bring it back in January for you guys to take a peek.
I have two comments.
okay.
And mine are pretty quick. Page 5, executive session number 3. I think it's just important that we as a collective group, team of 7, team of 8, recognize that the conversations that we have in executive session should remain in executive session. Because if we're not able to develop or have that trust amongst the group, we won't be able to have crucial conversations for the benefit of the school district. So I think it's just important that we highlight that's a part of our operating procedures, and we recognize that publicly with the group. Also, page 6, I don't have this information, so maybe, and I don't know if Chris does, just as new board members, if you could send this to us, that would be helpful. Under communications, item 3, the superintendent will annually provide a planning calendar with board reports, July. So if I could get that as a new board member, that would be helpful, please. Those are my only two observations. I do want to go back to the consent for just a minute.
Okay.
I'm hopeful that it'll be read in a way that we still have the discretion, but it's encouraged that if we see an item, we bring it prior to the meeting.
I think that's fair. We could word it that way.
All right.
I say my only thing I had to note too about the kind of the Facebook, and it's not even just the anonymous part of it, but just I think yes, we've talked, many of us, that social media has some positives, but also a lot of potential downsides. I think one of the keys that's in our document here, and I think we need to practice it anywhere we speak, is that, I mean, you said it, when we're speaking to an individual, or when we're speaking to the media, or when we're speaking on Facebook, we're only speaking as an individual board member. We're not speaking for the board or for anybody else on the board. And I know I've over the years went to a Facebook, at TASB conference, right? You go through a session that how are you supposed to manage social media and one is very carefully, but they always suggest, if you're going to post something, put that statement in there. If you are doing anything that looks like it's, an opinion, right? That this is your opinion, or, and you're speaking just for yourself. I try to do that when I come my own board Facebook page. So I think it's just a good reminder.
I think if we're going to talk about that, then maybe page 4, we just need to really focus on honor and conduct, and 4 and 5, making sure that we're basing our decisions on fact rather than public favor, opinion, but then also 5 being super important, that we're making every reasonable effort to protect the integrity and promote the positive image of this district, and not painting it any other way, that we're trying to push CSISD in a positive light. So those were my 2 that really stood out.
Well, I appreciate the discussion. Again, we'll do a little cleanup, and I'll look into a couple of the questions that you guys asked, and we'll follow back up on that. But that will bring us to item E, adjourn.